Okay, hello everyone, Schwartzfiat here, and today I want to make a little video talking about my opinion on all the things you can cert into for your ESF, most importantly though the Scythe. Hopefully this time people will leave me alone while making the video. Last time I had people yelling on proxy chat and yada yada yada, calling me bad names. Anyways, a couple things I want to say right off the bat is I'm not going to be talking that much about the new weapons since I really don't I've never used them and I really have no intentions of doing so, and I don't want to talk too much about weapons that I never use or have any intention of using. So this is going to be mainly just a focus on pure certs for the ESF. Also note I only fly the Scythe, being as I'm a hardcore Vanu, that therefore some of the stuff that I say here may not be necessarily or may not necessarily apply to the Reaver or Mosquitoes, but in general, I think for the most part, since a lot of these, everything except, or pretty much every cert is across the board, across all empires, so there could be some things that apply, or a lot that apply to all fighters. Anyways, first off, you have the passive certs. This really doesn't need much said on it, as this is more of a personal preference type thing. Me personally, because I fly a lot and really love the Scythe, I have it fully certed, but I didn't fully cert it right away. But you want at least a couple ones into it, considering how cheap the first couple ranks are. But whether or not you fully cert this is up to you, because basically the ESF by default, after you spawn it, has a 15-minute timer, and before you can spawn it again, each one of these reduces it by a minute, allowing you to reduce the whole timer altogether down to just 5 minutes. So whether or not you want to start this up depends on how much you want to fly and how often, or yeah, it's pretty much just how often, how much you fly, how hardcore you are into it. Though I do recommend, like I say, just getting a couple levels that are cheaper and then focusing on other things right away, because some of this other stuff can help you stay alive longer, thus prohibiting a death, which would require you to have to wait on a timer. Alright, getting into the utility slots, first we have the Scout Radar. What this does is it shows all enemies, all infantry enemies, on the ground within the proximity that says. At first rank it's 50 meters, then 100, then 150, then 200. The thing is with this, generally you're flying about 50 to 100 meters off the ground anyways, so if you're that far off the ground, you know, having just the first couple ranks isn't going to necessarily help because you'll be up too high to see them. This is, quite frankly, a cert that you need to fully cert altogether, and so that's like 50, 150, 350, so 850 certs altogether, and like I say, it's something you really need to fully cert before you can, it's really effective. But once fully certed, it is insanely effective. I pretty much don't fly with anything but this, because the ability to show up all infantry units within your 200 meters is a major help, and not just to you, but that information is relayed to your teammates. So if you're trying to capture a point, this will, and you're flying over it and your teammates down below on the ground are trying to capture it, they'll see exactly where the enemies are, or if they're defending a point. I found it's very useful to just sit in the vehicle bay of an amp station or biolab with the engine kill, so your vehicle hovers steadily without you having to keep hitting the buttons to do that. And then if you just sit in the middle of those facilities within the safety of the shield generator, that 200 meters pretty much covers the whole facility. And I've seen battles won simply because radar was just so helpful, and all my team was just so very well using the radar information to them. And now that they recently changed it so that it gives you experience for it, it's really nice. So this is a good cert for people who really want to help a team in a way. And like I say, because it gives you experience and helps you find enemies that you may not have otherwise seen, it's really good at helping you get kills too. Definitely worth it. Next we have the decoy flares. These basically will break any missile and all missile locks on you, so 100 missiles could be locking you all at once, and one activation of this will break them and prohibits you from being locked again for another 5 seconds. This is quite an expensive cert tree, however, starting at 100, 200, then 500, then 1000. Further certing it decreases the time before it can be activated again. Originally it starts out at 40 seconds and can be certed all the way down to 25 seconds. You'll have to make your own decisions on this, but personally I don't think it's worth fully certing, because basically even if you cert it down to 25 seconds, that's still a 20-second period in which you could be locked by missile fire, and considering you only have 5 seconds of invulnerability to being locked, the difference between 40 and 25 seconds isn't going to make a big deal, because 20 seconds is plenty of time for someone else to lock you and bring you down. And generally speaking, this is designed to either get you out or far away from ground-based targets that are trying to lock to you, or get into position where if an enemy aircraft is trying to lock you, you can get them into position where they have to engage with nose guns and you're in a dogfight. So it's just to give you that little precious time to either get away or to get into a position to take out your attacker. It's not intended as a means to make you invulnerable to multiple weapons. So if you go into a big massive battle and you get multiple locks on you, you know, if you don't run away at the first after activating it or while activating it, and you stick around, it's not going to make a bit of a difference whether you have it down to 25 seconds or 40 seconds. So again, it can help in larger fights, but when you have multiple missile locks on in you anyways, you know, after that 5 seconds is up, if you haven't gotten away, then say it's really not going to matter much whether you have it certed down to 25 seconds or 40 seconds. If, however, you stick to smaller fights, you know, it may actually help. I mean, it's just depending on how much you get locked, but I personally am not going to fully cert it unless I'm either decide to just because I'm a completionist, or if they increase with each rank the amount of time that it blocks new targeting. That would be a nice thing, but as it stands, but overall it is a good system, because lock-on missiles are very annoying, and this gives you precious time to either get away or engage your attacker. Next we have the ejection system. Many people claim that this is worthless, and if you're building your ESF for pure combat, then it is, because it does assume that you're going to lose the fight. And as some have said, why would I equip this when I could have equipped decoy flares that may have blocked the missile that eventually killed me, thus, or destroyed the aircraft, thus causing me to eject? Or, you know, I could just use the fire extinguisher to repair some damage that would have made it from keeping me having to abandon. So if you're, like I say, if you're building for combat, the ejection system is useless. If, however, you are a sniper looking to get into good positions, like, for example, your faction's attacking an enemy biolab and it's at the point where the enemy defenders are up on the air pads firing down at you, using this to carefully drop down on top of the biolabs if you're quick enough, and because, I mean, it does leave a trail that people could see, so if you just fly right over the biolab at high speed, then eject at a very low altitude right above the biolab, you can pretty much bail maybe without people seeing you. And if you have the suppressor on your sniper rifle, then you can get some pretty good kill sprees from sitting up on top of there, and it's useful for getting into other sniping positions that may not otherwise be accessible. Also, I found that it's really good for a maneuver I refer to as the repus. This involves, if you see an enemy sunderer coming down on them, firing a bunch of rockets, and then machine gun, and then bailing out on top of them, and as you bail out, you're dropping C4 down on top of the sunderer, and by the time it, you know, and since the C4 will have been in the air a couple seconds, if you do it right, by the time it hits the sunderer and you land too, you can go ahead and activate it, and the damage from multiple bricks of C4 combined with the damage from your rocket pods and nose gun fire is generally enough to blow that sunderer up very quickly before the enemy has time to repair it. And when done properly, this can pretty much, I mean, it can completely destroy sunderers, and if it was a sunderer that was very well defended, it's amazing how quick, you know, attacks can be broken if you successfully pull this off. However, that maneuver is quite difficult, and it requires picture-perfect precision, and I admit, in all the times I've tried it, I've had more failures than successes, but the successes of doing that are awesome. You will most assuredly die, though, but if you manage to kill the sunderer first, it's just so nice. But so yeah, basically, I found that this is really only useful for that maneuver and for getting into good sniping positions, but isn't necessarily good if you're trying to be full on combat with your aircraft. Next we have the fire extinguisher, and this has recently received a couple buffs. I mean, back in the original release of the game, this system pretty much sucked. But what it does now is if you are on fire, aka in the red, it will restore you back to the green and repair an additional amount of health. And even if you're not in the red, when activated over the course of 5 seconds, it will repair some health, starting out at 6% and ending up at 25%. This is very useful in both air-to-air and air-to-ground combat, as you can repair while fighting. Now, generally, 25% at fully certed over 5 seconds cannot out-tank incoming damage, but in sometimes firefights, if you're dodging very well, or like you're in a dogfight, you know, the ability to repair 25% could mean the difference between life or death in a close dogfight against another opponent or skilled opponent. And sometimes if they get you down in the red, you know, as someone have said, you know, when people see someone in the red, they try to go for them and quickly take them out. If you're suddenly brought back to the green and then start regenerating health, then that could give you the edge that you need to kill them. There have been several fights in which many people who have used this have survived simply because of it. Do note, however, one thing to take into consideration: if it's enemy lock-ons that are doing the damage, if you break a lock, generally most missiles, if they hit you, it's about 40 to 50% of your health, whereas this only repairs about 25%. So if your major incoming damage comes from lock-ons, this might be something you might want to consider, the decoy flares. But again, this is useful for all types of damage. It can be repaired while in combat. And this could be very useful too if you're playing as a light assault, so that you can bail if worse comes to worse. If you have this in combination with the nanite system for auto repair, it can be very useful, because the nanite system will not repair you if you're on fire and aka in the red zone. This can get you out of the red zone and get you back in the green, where the nanite system for auto repair will take care of the rest and try to restore you to full health, assuming you're not still taking damage. So a good system for both air-to-air and air-to-ground. And then lastly, for the U slot, we have the recently added, here it's called Angriffs Radar, which translates to Attack Radar. I'm not sure what it's called in English, but this is a very cheap cert line. Like most of the new stuff they included, you know, first rank is 1 cert, second's 10, next is 50, then 100. This basically shows enemies, you know, if your enemy aircraft are flying around you and they go off screen, it has a little indicator on the side of the screens, like a lot of older or first space combat sims or other flight sims, where once they go off the screen you see this little arrow. It's not an arrow, but it's just words that allows you to indicate, hey, if you turn in this direction, then you can get them back in visual sight, so you can continue to fight them. So obviously this is only useful in air-to-air combat, but it can help you keep your eyes on your enemies. Now, as I understand it though, if your enemy has fully certed stealth, then they're not going to be shown up with this. But if you're hardcore into air-to-air dogfighting, this might not be a bad system for you if you want to be able to keep your eyes on the enemies. Do note, however, that if you use this, then you're obviously giving up decoy flares to break missile locks and the ability to repair yourself a little bit of damage. Next, for the defensive slots, first off we have the composite armor. This is very useful if you're trying to attack base or ground-based flak turrets, particularly from sky guards and things like that, because when fully certed it reduces the damage by about 30% from flak, and the damage from small arms fire from infantry by 10%. But the major advantage here is the reduction in flak damage. Basically, it's like for every 3 shots of flak coming at you, only 2 do damage. And so if you're trying to take out anti-air flak turrets or sky guards, this can be a very good system for base assaults. I mean, there's really not much more to say about that, but oh wait, it does have the major disadvantage though of only being useful in air-to-ground combat. So if you get attacked by other enemy aircraft, well, this is going to provide you no protection at all. So only use this if you're hardcore into air-to-ground combat, because if that's the case, then it is a very good help to you in that. You know, particularly because one thing that a lot of people don't realize, unless it's changed, I mean, I haven't tried it recently, but I know for a fact before the recent ESF update, a single clip from the Vanu nose guns, the Hailstorm, or the Sarn laser cannon, when every shot hit, was enough to take out a full health max. And without this composite armor, you could still survive. If basically the way it worked is, if I saw a dual burster max at the same time and we started shooting each other at the same time, without this composite armor, I would survive with about 20% health. But there were some times, but if he sees me for a first couple seconds or things like that, then I better run, because I know without the composite armor I won't survive. But so this is really good, not against only against sky guards or flak turrets, but for really taking out dual burster maxes, because if you have this fully certed, it gives you a couple extra seconds to line up on them. Like I say, the nose gun combined with rockets or whatever, you may be coming in at a distance, fire rockets, hit them with rockets, then switch to your nose gun, your thermal optics, so you can see through the smoke of all the flak and stuff, and take them out. This can be really useful in making it so much easier to take out dual burster maxes. Alright, next we have the nanite system for auto repair, fully certed. It will repair 8.33% damage every 5 seconds after a period of 8 seconds has elapsed in which you've taken no damage. Many pilots use this very effectively because it is a very good system. While you can't repair in battle exactly while taking damage, it can still be useful in some battles, because I've seen many pilots use this effectively. I mean, I've been in some good dogfights where the enemy pilot clearly had this system installed and fully certed, and they were going around behind mountains, and when you're going in behind mountains and at this kind of speed of things like mosquitoes and stuff are going, it's very hard to keep hitting them once every 8 seconds. So while you may hit them like once every 10 or so seconds or more like that, they're still gaining a couple amount of health that can really help them in combat. So this can actually be used in combat if you're really good at dodging between mountains and things like that. But the main thing is, this prohibits you from having, gets rid of the need for having to land to get out of your aircraft and repair. You can just stay mobile and stay alert while repairing. So it's a really nice system in that regard. And in some long-range duels, like for example, if you're fighting at long range against a Galaxy or Liberator, and their machine guns hit you for a little bit of damage, you can just dodge at the amazing range, and they can have a hard time hitting you, so that this system can kick in. And if you can get shots on them, then even if they have auto repair, you can get enough shots in on them where it won't kick in, but hopefully they'll miss you enough to where you can keep your aircraft fully repaired. I mean, there have been times, like one fight in particular, I had this system and was fully certed, and I was fighting against a Galaxy, and they did more than 100% damage to me, or the equivalent of it, but because I had this and they weren't hitting as often, they were unable to kill me, and they eventually went down in that long range duel. And a related story, the Sarn laser cannon is awesome. Alright, then lastly for the defense slots, we have the vehicle stealth. This is pretty much the only system, I would say it's the only system you'll see me in, but you will not see me, well, that's a terrible joke, I guess. Point is, if you see me in this system, I'm doing something wrong. But basically, this has two advantages. When fully certed, it will increase the lock-on time by 1 second for enemy missiles, and it'll also make it so that your vehicle doesn't appear on enemy radar. Now, if you're spotted, it will show a symbol of your aircraft at the exact position where you were spotted. So if you keep moving, then it's just going to be like showing up on their radar in that one position, so it's not going to move with you even if they spot you. At least that's the way as I understand it, if I remember correctly, unless they've changed it. That's the way it was. So very nice system there. Pretty much when fully certed, unless they see you with your eyes, they'll have no idea you're coming. And while some of this other stuff may provide defensive bonuses or the ability to repair, you cannot underestimate the ability to not be seen. There have been so many kills that I don't think I would have gotten did I not had this system. I mean, sometimes I've snuck on infantry or snipers, no joke, like 20 meters away from them and got like a point-blank kill, but because they had no idea that I was right behind them, and it's kind of funny sometimes. And it's really useful when you have like an enemy aircraft just hovering or trying to spawn camp one of your teammates, just come up right behind them and then just unload out of nowhere. And this is particularly very useful on the Scythe, primarily because of the simple fact that the Scythe is one of the quieter aircraft vehicles, or ESFs, that I'm aware of. I mean, I know with the Reavers and the Mosquitoes, especially the Reavers, they give away a sound, so I know they're coming even without the need for radar, even if they have vehicle stealth or not. I think there are plans to have this so that this mask engine sounds as well, but for the moment, the ability to not be seen cannot be underestimated. And that one additional second, that can actually help you somewhat, because hey, 1 second's an eternity in combat, as someone has said. So basically, with your defense slots, you have a choice between a damage reduction from flak or small arms fire, the ability to repair without landing, or the ability to not be seen on radar. And all three of these are very, very good. They have their uses, and you should consider each one carefully, and don't be afraid to mix up, because sometimes, like for example, even though I love vehicle stealth, let's say for example you're trying to assault a well-defended base, vehicle stealth is not going to do you much good, because there's going to be so much enemies after you that you'll be seen visually, so it's not like it's going to matter. So coming in against those flak turrets with composite armor might be a better choice, or because there's just so many enemies around, you don't want to take the chance to have to land, or the risk of having to land, so you can use the nanite system to keep you repaired. Though one thing about repairing, the vehicle stealth does make it your aircraft still not show up on enemy radar if you're out of it. Coincidentally, speaking of being in and out, with scout radar, you have to actually be in your aircraft for that to take effect. So if you get out, then you and all your allies are going to lose the positions that it was showing you. But anyways, going back to repairing here, if you get out of it, this system is still active, and there have been some times, and it's happened a couple times, where I was damaged, I got out and repaired, and an enemy aircraft flew right over me, maybe like 50 or 100 meters, did not see me on radar, and they weren't clearly looking down visually, so they had no idea I was there, and they clearly didn't have radar, indicating that an infantry unit was on the ground. So there have been times when an enemy aircraft has just flown casually right over me. I finished my repairs, got back up, went after him, and took him down. It's really funny to see that happen. And in another funny story of just how useful this is, while the composite armor may be helpful against Skyguard's flak, I've actually been able to take down a solo Skyguard using vehicle stealth. Basically what happened was, he started shooting at me, and then I flew behind some trees, and then I landed my Scythe, no joke, right beside him. And the whole time he was still in his tank, he clearly did not think it would be a good idea to turn his turret around and see if there was anything behind him. And you got to keep in mind, people are so used to radar and people using automatic repair or composite armor, they don't really consider the possibility of enemies using stealth. So I literally landed my Scythe about 20 meters behind an enemy Skyguard, got out, put C4 on his Skyguard, backed up, blew it up, got back in the Scythe, and flew off. You know, that's one of the kind of kills you don't ever want to have happen to you, and it serves as a lesson that you need to pay attention if you're in a Skyguard and be aware of stealth. But I'm just saying, that's the pure beauty of stealth, and, you know, and the sad part is, that's not the only tank I've destroyed like that. I've gotten a couple kills on tanks by just landing like 20 or 50 meters right behind them, walking up to them, putting C4 on the back, jumping off, blowing them up, and then getting back in the Scythe and flying off. It's really funny. But yeah, this vehicle stealth is really amazing. However, it's important to note that you do not become fully stealth until it's fully certed. You start out at 174 meters, and then 116, and then 58. So it's a huge cert investment before this is actually really useful, because obviously if you don't fully cert it, then you're not going to be able to pull off some of the maneuvers like I was just saying. You know, like sneaking up behind an enemy aircraft or things like that. So unfortunately, while this is a really good system, it's only really good if you have it fully certed, which will cost you about 1,330 certs. So yeah. Next we have the performance slots. Quite frankly, I'm not going to go into detail about this too much, but one thing you do need to be aware is that the advantage of the Mosquito is speed and maneuverability, and the advantage of the Scythe is natural hover stability. So for example, I don't intend to ever cert hover stability for my Scythe because it naturally has great hover stability, but lacks speed and maneuverability, some of the others. But basically with this, because this affects the way the vehicle handles, I can't really make recommendations to different players because we all fight in different playstyles. Some people like using hover stability in dogfights because it allows them to perform vertical thrust and things like that, which open up, as they say, a possibility for a whole bunch of different maneuvers in combat. So basically with this, my recommendation is just to go to the VR training, play around with all of them extensively for hours if you have to, and get a feel for what settings and maneuverability or performance enhancements you like best, and then use what feels the best to you. I mean, I can't really make a recommendation because, again, stuff that affects how a vehicle handles is entirely personal opinion and personal preference, what you may be used to or like. Then we have the external afterburner tanks. These are really good if you don't plan to ever use any of the secondary weapons, since the afterburner take up the secondary weapon slot. And to fully cert this is very cheap, maybe like a little over 200 certs to get it fully certed, which is cheaper if you don't plan to pay real money for the weapons, the secondary weapons. This could give you a decent advantage while waiting to earn enough certs to unlock a secondary weapon. But me personally, I pretty much use nothing but the afterburner tanks, so the ability to cert them up and make them better to increase their capacity and regeneration speed cannot be underestimated, because it gives you more maneuverability options in combat. If you're being swarmed by enemies that are faster, it gives you the opportunity to get away. I mean, one time in particular I had this fully certed, and then 3 mosquitoes saw me when I was in their territory and started chasing after me. Because I had fully certed afterburner tanks, I was able to make it back just fine to a friendly base, complete with lots of anti-air heavy assaults and a skyguard. And all 3 of those mosquitoes died quickly. They thought they had an easy kill on them, but it got away from them. And so that's the beauty of this kind of system. It does give you a good advantage, like faster regeneration and faster or greater capacity. But if you, and like I say, I think it's even probably worth certing into, even if you plan to get to unlock the other weapons at a later stage. But yeah, but I say that's the beauty of this, because right now there's only one option, so this is one of those things that's just simply a straight up upgrade, and you're not sacrificing anything else except maybe the potential to put certs into something else sooner by fully certing this.